My pleasure and honor to call upon Rabbi Kenneth Hain, who doesn't need any introduction in this neighborhood, who will speak on humor, hashkafic perspectives.
This is being taped and filmed. All right, that cuts out half the material. All right, that's the first joke. Hopefully. Good afternoon, welcome. You know, I read the other day in a, I don't know what it was, I think it was online, a slate which said, never accept an appointment unless you would accept it for the next day. So when they called me about 4 months ago and they said, would you like to give a talk on humor and related matters? When is it? I said, June 2nd. I said, yeah, sure, fine. And I said, yesterday, June 2nd, that's Erev Shavuos, what am I doing here? Anyway, I'm glad to be here, in truth, because I know not only a lot of you sitting here, we've known each other a long time, and I'm also very mindful of the fact that there are many reasons in the world today not to laugh. There are many serious issues and many somber realities that we, particularly as the Jewish people, are facing. And perhaps for that very reason, this topic and this talk is particularly relevant. So, when we think of a Jewish perspective on humor, we have to first ask ourselves an important question. Is a Jew allowed to engage in humor? That's one good answer. Why not? Where in our tradition do we see that it's permissible to respond humorously? Purim? That's good. It's Erev Shavuos, though. What are we doing here?
Good question.
Any other response? Where in our tradition is humor or a humorous response a legitimate one? Sarah, when she heard she was going to have a baby, she laughed. And was criticized. Which also brings another not so humorous fact into our thoughts. Namely, when Abraham heard that he was going to have a baby, what was his reaction? He laughed. And he wasn't criticized for it. Whoa. Why is that? So Rashi says, because when he heard the news, he was misameach. He was joyous. So when he heard it, he laughed. When she heard it, she also laughed. So you see already there are two different kinds of laughs. There's a joyous laugh. There's perhaps, at least according to Chazal, a mocking laugh. So perhaps, though, we have a little bit of a response that laughing is okay. Where else do we see, following that idea, that laughing, joking, humor is a part of Jewish tradition? Well, let's stick with Abraham and Sarah first. What did they name that boy? Yitzchak. Yitzchak, the first Jewish boy ever to walk on this earth, was named for the fact that he will laugh. That's our hope for him. That's our dream, that we will have a son who will laugh. That's a remarkable hope for a Jewish boy. Obviously, Abraham and Sarah did not realize that he should be going to medical school or becoming a hedge fund or something. But they were hopeful that he would laugh. And so this is the beginning of the sort of Jewish, I would call it romance with laughter, which is carried down into our current state of the Jewish people. I'm sure all of you heard about a few months ago the well-known study done by the Pew Commission, the Pew Report on the state of Jewry, particularly in America. And they particularly asked, what are the qualities that make up being a Jew? So, what essential element do you regard as necessary to be a Jew today? So the number one answer was caring about others. That was not number one. Anybody know what number one was? Laughing was not number one. This tells you actually, I think, something not funny about American Jewry. 73% of American Jews felt that the number one thing that a Jew today should remember and recognize is the Shoah. So you could view that in a positive sense. On the other hand, you could say, Nebuch, if that's the first response you have about what's important to be a Jew, to remember the greatest tragedy, perhaps, in Jewish history, maybe we should worry. What was number two, by the way, that they thought? That was 73%. 69% felt that the most important element of being a Jew is to live an ethical life. Close enough. An ethical life. That you should live a life that is responsible to others, to live a life where you treat others properly. Number three, 56% said most important part of being a Jew is to exhibit justice and equality towards others. Interesting. 49% said the most important element of being a Jew is to be intellectually curious. Obviously, you're all in that 49%. You showed up today. Now we get to number 5. 43% said that the most important element of being a Jew is to have a sense of humor. Gets a prize. Is there, oh, you got one already. Sorry. Okay. You won't have to come up here and play act or anything with me. Don't worry. By the way, that was a tie with another element that's 43% of American Jews felt that is the most important thing for them is caring about Israel. Education is not up there. Yeah. They took a lot of this survey was done in Florida, so they forgot about the family already.
Is there anybody on this survey that said following Jewish law?
Way down. Way down. Absolutely. But what's interesting is when you think about it, just for a moment, that of all the things, and there are many, many more things listed down as you go down, 30%, 25%, 20%, a whole host of other issues, including education and so forth, that having a sense of humor, Jews regard as essential, 43% regard that as essential to being Jewish. That's what some people might call a bittere Gelächter. Can I translate that?
Bitter laughter.
Bitter laughter, okay, yeah, that's it. It's the moror and the charosis. So, given that fact, And given the fact that obviously there's a lot more that we could talk about in that survey, which is not the topic for today, but recognizing that being a part of the Jewish tradition seems to be, for many, engaged in humor. Is that really so bad? Is that really something that is a part of Jewish tradition? And that while it may not be as significant for many of us sitting here as keeping Shabbos or keeping Kashrus or celebrating Shavuos or learning Torah or davening and so forth, in terms of our internal lives, what role does humor play for Jews? What positive role does humor play for Jews? So that you have to talk to Dr. Goldberg about, releasing tension. I agree with you.
Even if you go sometimes for Shiva visits, even saddest time, and
Right.
sometimes people will
Laugh. Absolutely. People will go, sometimes you'll find at a Shiva visit, sometimes something is said and people laugh. And there's that awkward moment of, do you laugh with them? But that's certainly a psychological value. I'm talking about, let's say, from a Jewish, more ideological perspective. How do we view humor? So here I think there is a lot that is said on it, and we can look at some of our sources, and we can also look at how Jewish humor has played out. So over the next, Judy, how long am I here? 2:30? Yeah, I don't think anybody should do stand-up for that long. What I'd like to do is talk about, from a perspective of what some of our basic sources say about humor, and also how it's played out over the course of Jewish history and Jewish life. So, to start basically, there's clearly a long tradition of Jewish humor. There's a Gemara that tells us the following. It's Gemara in Eruvin, Daf Samach Dalet, Amud Beis. You've probably heard this Gemara. Adam nikar b'shlosha devarim. A man, person, is known by three things. Bekiso, bekoso, ubekaso, right? That a person is known by his kis, his pocket, perhaps that's his wealth, what he's worth, how he lives. Bekoso, his cup, perhaps how he celebrates, how he has a good time. Ubekaso, and how he gets angry, or perhaps what he gets angry about. By the way, there's a beautiful idea from a Maggid, which you'll forgive me because besides being a Jewish humorist, I also am a rabbi, who says that these three, kiso, koso, and kaso, your pocket, your cup, and your anger, actually refer to, anybody know? 3 times of the year. Kiso is Chag HaShavuos, Chag HaSukkos, that's when we gather in to our pockets all of our possessions, our harvest. Bekoso, that's an easy one. What's that? Pesach, that's when we celebrate our freedom, we raise our glasses. Dalet Kosos. And what is Kaso? What we really care about, what we really are passionate about, what we can get angry about, which is Shavuos, namely our Torah. Or perhaps to put it a better way, what we really will fight for, which is our Torah. But the Gemara has one more item, and says, V'omri lei, there's another item. According to some, a person is recognized by one more quality besides kiso, koso, and kaso. Schoko, his laughter. What makes him laugh? Rabbis don't usually talk about that one. But there's a yesh omrim there. What does that mean?
I think there's even more than a yesh omrim. There's a mice in the Gemara that speaks about someone who was concerned who was going to be with him in Olam Haba. And Rabbi took him into the shuk and said, I'll show you who's going to be next to you. Come with me. And there was a Levi going through the shuk.
Right.
Not everyone was happy at all about that, right?
Right.
But there was one person, not a rabbi, not a Talmud Chacham, a Pasha Yid, and what was he doing?
Right.
He was gesturing.
Right. A badchen. Right. So good. So we see that Chazal recognize inherent in being human is to also laugh. Actually, Chazal didn't make this up. Shlomo HaMelech said it. Eis livkos, there's a time to cry. The eis, there's a time to laugh. Jews tend to be human, hopefully. And therefore, we also laugh. And we have every right to laugh. Yes, let's make the point now. There is a concern about humor. There's a danger to humor. What's the danger?
You can hurt someone.
You can hurt someone. Humor can reach a point of mockery. What would you call humor that is mocking? What's the Jewish term for it? Okay, machoizik, that's good. But the more biblical term, at least, is b'moshav leitzim. Leitzonus is a mockery. And that's, where do we find that moshav leitzim term? Where is that found in Tanakh? In the first perek of Tehillim. So there is a danger. We know there's a danger, and in fact, the concern for that danger is talked about by many with great worry, and we often use that to caution people to refrain from laughter or excessive lightheartedness. I would say some traditions in, let's say, the Litvische Jewish tradition take this a little bit, perhaps even to an extreme, of being very sort of somber and serious, even a chassan at his own wedding who walks as if he's about to go to the gallows, you know. But that too is supported by the idea that we are concerned about it. There's the Gemara that supports it. Let me just remind you of this Gemara, which is an important Gemara, which is the Gemara in Brachos, which says, "Asur le'adam she'amale schok b'piv be'olam hazeh." That a person is not allowed to fill his mouth with schok, with laughter, with joking around in this world. Where do we know that from? Shenemar, what's the pasuk? You all know this pasuk. You sing it every week. Oz yemole schok pinu l'shonenu rina. Where do we say that? Shir Malos. Oz, the Gemara says, then, Amosai, when can you fill your mouth with schok, with laughter? Bizman sheyomru bagoyim higdil Hashem lasos im eleh. Only when the goyim are ready to recognize the Rabboni Shalom, then you can fill your mouth with laughter. So there's much discussion of this. In fact, this is found in the Shulchan Aruch. But just to cut to the chase, most understand that this means excessively. Filling your mouth meaning that you're just consumed with joking, that life is a big joke. Then you cannot do that until the world is a better place, until presumably Mashiach comes and we're living in a time when we don't have other concerns. But until then, to be totally consumed by joking, by mockery, by leitzanus, by filling your whole life with foolishness, that's unacceptable. But that's the extreme. What clearly Chazal saw is that humor is a part of being human. Famous Gemara, just to give you a little example. A Gemara in Psachim about Pesach, where discussing about doing bedikas chametz, and if you've taken the chametz that you gathered when you did the bedika, and you brought it out and you put it at a separate place, and the Gemara discusses, well, what about the problem of if it's on the night of the 14th and a rodent might come in and take the chametz out. And so the Gemara says, Amar Rava, v'chi chulda neviyahi. The chulda, in this case, is a play on words. Chulda means a rodent, a weasel, but chulda is also whom? A neviah, a prophet, a prophetess. So cleverly, Rava says, is the chulda a chulda? Is the chulda a prophet? In other words, does the weasel know it's the 14th of Nisan? So he's joking, or cleverly evoking a humorous reference. It's a double entendre, in a sense. He's using the word chulda. But perhaps the most clear statement of the value of humor or the correctness of including humor in our lives is something that I once heard from Rav Soloveitchik Zatzal, and he actually talked about it in a hesped, ironically. The Gemara says in Avodah Zarah, Daf Gimel, it's a great Gemara just to think about this idea of the Gemara. The Gemara says that basically wants to know the answer to the question, what does God do all day? Doesn't go to lectures. What does he do? So the Gemara says, basically, the day is comprised of 12 hours. He obviously needs to sleep. Shlosha harishonos, during the first 3 hours, HaKadosh Baruch Hu yoshev v'osek b'Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu learns his Torah. You'd think he would know it, but even he needs to learn Torah. Shnios, the second 3 hours, yoshev v'don al kol ha'olam kulo. The second 3 hours, he sits and judges the whole world. Takes about 3 hours. Kivan sheroeh shenischayev olam kloya. Once he sees, after judging it for 3 hours, that it deserves to be annihilated, that it's such a terrible place, omed mikisei hadin v'yoshev al kisei rachamim. He moves his seat. Instead of sitting as a judge, meaning according to the actual letter of the law, he moves to his comfortable seat where it's a seat of rachamim, of compassion, of mercy. Shlishios, during the third period of the day, Yoshev v'zon es kol ha'olam kulo. The third part of the day, he sits and he provides nourishment for the whole world. You can imagine As you're hearing this, of course, this is a lyrical, metaphorical expression of what the Ribono Shel Olam is about, but it's also about the halachta b'drachav, that we should follow in his ways. What are we doing? What do we do? Finally, number 4, the 4th segment of the day, Revios, the 4th day, Yoshev umesachek im livyasan. What does he do, the 4th segment of the day? He plays with the livyasan, the Leviathan, which is, let me know, a big fish, a figure or a creature somewhere between a mythical kind of creature to I picture it all as one of these porpoises, playful. Meaning, he thinks and he says, he sits, Shenemar livyasan zeh yotzarta l'sachik. You created this livyasan l'sachik, to play with, to have fun. Rav Soloveitchik said this is a picture of a human being, that we are created in the image of God, that we need to do all of these things clearly, that man has an obligation to engage in Torah, engage in helping others, engage in judging what is the correct thing to do, and also an obligation to enjoy the world, to laugh. So Jews, of course, as we know very well, have perhaps been most machmir on this 4th segment of the Gemara. We have, depending on who you are, we have seized upon this permission or this right or this segment as being, if not the ikar, certainly a significant part of our lives. And so, clearly, there is an opening, the Rav suggested, for recognizing that it's okay to play ball, to go swimming, to have fun. And I think it's an important statement. Now, and I think that's more than a heter, in a sense. That's saying actually something that Chazal are encouraging us to engage in the world, not just on an esoteric level, not just on an intellectual level, not just on a sense of mission of what we should be doing, but also on a human level. That we have a right, la'olam yehei adam, we have a right to be human. And humans laugh, and humans cry, and humans enjoy, and humans feel, and are also able to even find in this world moments of great joy and laughter. What else does humor do for a Jew? And why is it that the Jewish people have seemingly become experts in humor? They did a study of stand-up comedians in entertainment, and I don't know which year this was, it was a few years ago. 80% of the stand-up comedians in America were Jewish. And that's not even counting the rabbis. It's just people who declared themselves stand-up comedians. What accounts for the Jews being so drawn to humor? What do you think? Yes? Very good. Right. absolutely. That things are absurd, and we are seeing it, and we're sort of the outsider looking in. The alienation, in a sense, of the Jew, which seems to contribute to what makes things funny. And that's certainly true. In fact, there's a fellow I saw, naturally, he wrote a doctoral dissertation on Jewish humor. I mean, I'm sure there have been many of them. But he wrote basically that, I mean, to get a doctorate for this, I don't know, but, you know, hey, the following, no, how did I put it? Yeah, he basically said the following, and this is, I think, a very accurate statement, that humor is a natural response to living in a world filled with conflict. Who else, more than the Jew, has lived in a world of conflict and still living in a world of conflict? And so when you are living in that state, the natural response is to respond, apparently, with this sense of humor, of making fun, the shtuch, the badchan, the outsider, the oddball. That's us. And so Jews became really, it would seem, experts and specialists in it. In a certain sense, it's, you know, the way I would account for chelm, which is the ultimate sort of Jewish expression of living in the absurd, right? I don't know, you probably have a favorite chelm story. My favorite, you know, my favorite is the shamus from Chelm goes to visit Varsha. He walks into the shul there, and there is the shamus from the shul in Varsha, and the shamus of the Varsha shul gets up and says, I have a question. Who is the son of my father, and he's not my brother? Nobody can figure it out. Finally he says, me. I'm the son of my father, and I'm not my brother. The shamus from Chelm loves the story. Goes back to Chelm to tell this story. Walks into shul and says, Harriet, listen, have a question. Who is the son of my father, but he's not my brother? So one guy in Chelm says, that would be you. He says, no, the shamus in Varsha. The absurdity. That's what makes it perfect. I mean, maybe the better, this is maybe a little more close to home. The Rabbanim of Chelm had a big shaila. A woman came to them because she had a buttered piece of bread, and it slipped off the plate, and it fell with the butter on the upside. And they wanted to know, she wanted to know, why did it fall with the butter on the top side when we all know that a buttered piece of bread always falls on the buttered side below? So the Rabbanim sat and thought, and they were done, and they were thinking, and finally they decided, what was their conclusion? She had buttered it on the wrong side, exactly. So that kind of absurd, crazy, that's perfect for us. You know, I can't imagine that works in China as funny. Maybe it does. That's who we are. In addition to dealing with the absurd, is also our intimate relationship with God. we have a different kind of relationship with the Rabbanu Shalom, in a sense, right? When we talk to the Rabbanu Shalom, we don't address them as, despite Martin Buber, thou. We say Baruch Atah. As they say, me and you. I'm talking to you. We're very close to the Rabbanu Shalom, right? Then we go into the third person, Elokeinu, Elokei Avotenu, etc. But at least initially, we're very close and up front. And that's the way Jews have always been with the Rabbanu Shalom. Particularly, that's, I think, the European and the Hasidic tradition. Even though this is not a Hasidic story, there's the story of the Vilna Apikoros. The Vilna Apikoros, the story of the Vilna Apikoros is a famous, to be an Apikoros in Vilna, you had to really be somebody, you had to really know something. So the Vilna Apikoros shows up in a small shtetl, and he's there for Shabbos. And this other fellow that he's staying with is an Apikoros. So the Vilna Apikoros says to him, he says, what time is davening? He says, davening 6 o'clock. He says, okay, let's go. He goes to shul, comes back. He says, I need lechem mishnah, I need to make kiddush, I need to eat. Okay, and he doesn't understand. He's this famous Vilna Apikoros. He's like a heretic. What's going on? The next morning he gets up, he goes to the Hashkama Minyan. He's there, he makes kiddush, he's there, he comes back, he has lunch, he runs back for mincha, he has shalosh shudas. Finally, Havdalah, it's over. So he says to him, Rabbi, you're the Vilna Apikoros, right? He says, yeah, of course. He says, so what are you doing? What are you doing all Shabbos? All you're doing, you're running the shul, you're eating the meals, you're making kiddush, you're benching, you're davening, you're learning. He says, I'm an Apikoros. But Shabbos? Shabbos is Shabbos. That kind of relationship. Who we are. My connection to Shabbos, to the Rabbanu Shalom, that has, in a sense, has nothing to do with the intellect. That's who we are. And you see it also, I think, in our rejection of our reality. In other words, that we're supposedly, as one scholar has written in a very famous work called The Ever-Dying People, that the Jewish people are ever dying, ever about to disappear. But we completely reject that. We never accept that kind of reality. We live, and one of the ways of rejecting that reality, in a sense, is to lachzachos, to laugh at it. Perhaps the best example of that, the fellow who's on his deathbed. Speaking of being, ever dying, there are a lot of jokes about people on their deathbed, by the way. But the one that I like is he's on his deathbed. I hope nobody's offended today. He's on his deathbed, and his son is sitting there. He says, I'm going, but I can smell your mother's brisket. She's cooking your brisket. You know this, Joe? So he says, I know I'm going to go very soon. He says, maybe ask your mother if I could have a little shtickle of the brisket, So the son goes downstairs. He comes back and says, Ma said no. She's saving it for the Shiva. That's the idea that we never despair. We never despair. We're always ready for there's another possibility, another way of looking things. Perhaps the other way this plays out, and we mentioned earlier about Avraham and Sarah, in a certain sense laughing, if you will, at God, at the Ribono Shel Olam, right? In a certain sense. One of the great themes of Jewish humor is making fun of authority. whether it's the big authority or the smaller authorities, whether it's the government authorities or, of course, the best rabbinical authorities. They are the biggest target of Jewish humor. And we love that, right? We love that. My favorite, one of my favorites, and I have many about making fun of rabbis, is the story of the town Ganef. You know the story of the town Ganef?
No.
See, that's the good thing. You don't even have to tell the joke. You can just say what it's about, and it's already funny. This is the story of the town Ganef. I love this. He comes in, knocks on the rabbi's door, opens the door, Rav comes out, says, Rebbe, I found somebody's wallet, and it's full of cash. And the rabbi looks at him, he can't believe this is the town Ganef. He's bringing in a full wallet of cash that somebody lost. He says, oh, I'm so proud of you. Of all people, you're coming to me with this wallet that you found. He says, yeah, listen, it's a vesves aveda. You have to return a lost object. He says, thank you. I'll give you a bracha. Gives him a bracha. He hugs him. Ganef walks out the door. The rabbi looks. His watch is gone. He can't believe it. He says, this guy just took my watch. He opens the door, runs down the street, catches up with the Ganef, and he says, Shlomo, what did you do? You stole my watch. He says, yeah. He says, I'm a Ganef. He says, but how could you do that? You just brought back the wallet that was full of money. He says, Rebbe, you don't understand. Returning the wallet, that's a mitzvah. The watch, that's my business. That's actually not so funny anymore. That ability to see the world that way and to recognize that rabbis don't fully necessarily get it is an important component. It's also a way of, I think, of dealing with the fact that the authorities that the Jews were under were so often impossible to make fun of, that the best available target was their authority, who they had. It's also possible that some of the rabbis may have deserved it, but that's, that's a different problem. I think also it's important to recognize that Jews living under such difficult conditions had to find ways of finding hope. And you do that by laughing. And it's an important way. It's important to balance, in a sense, to find some kind of balance when you're dealing in a world that is so harsh and so difficult. A lot of Jewish humor is us versus them, making fun of them, because the them were destroying and dealing difficult blows to us. And so much of, as was said, we were not just the outsider, we were being crushed. And this was, in a sense, a cry. That's the other, way. This was a kvetch. That reminds me, actually, the person who comes in, his family comes in, and he says, I don't want to be in this hospital. I want to go to another hospital. Why? Is it the food? He says, no, the food, I can't kvetch. It's okay. He says, is it the doctor? He says, no, it's fine, I can't kvetch. And is it the nurses? No, it's fine, I can't kvetch about that either. So why do you want to move to a different hospital? He says, because here I can't kvetch. So that was the response to the reality. That we need to kvetch, we need to laugh. But I want to give you what I think is really the ultimate point of Jewish humor. And that is hope for the future. The classic Gemara for this is the end of Makos, when Rabbi Akiva is walking in Yerushalayim. You know that Gemara, you've all heard it. Some of you heard it from me a couple of days ago. Right? And his three fellow rabbis are crying when they see Yerushalayim devastated with a fox running through the rubble. And Rabbi Akiva laughs. And he explains to them why he's laughing. He says, because we've seen the fulfillment now of two prophecies. One, or we see that this will be the fulfillment of two. One is the prediction by Uriah that the fox will go through the rubble. That means the prophecy of Zechariah will be fulfilled, who said that one day there will be old men and old women sitting on the streets of Jerusalem and little children playing in front of them. Rabbi Akiva laughed. Rabbi Akiva saw hope in the future. And they responded, Nichamtonu, Akiva. You've comforted us. Sometimes the ultimate value of a laugh is to give us comfort when the world looks dark and when our future looks bleak. And so it's important not to overstate the value of humor. Recently, Ruth Weiss wrote a book where she criticizes, I think correctly, how so many people see being Jewish as being Jewishly humorous. I think we understand that's not what being Jewish is. And that if you're just John Stewart and your only Jewishness is that you can make fun of being Jewish, that's not Jewish humor. That's sadly probably just Jewish hypocrisy. But we who have, hopefully, a deep sense of the value and the hope in our future can understand that there is a value in a laugh and a smile. Chazal, according to Rava, often would begin the study of Torah with what they call milei de b'dechusa. Milei de b'dechusa is a humorous thought, words of humor. Or as we call it in the rabbinate, an opener. And it does open us, I think. I think a laugh can open us, not just our mouths, but also our hearts. And hopefully, keeping it in balance, we can include that in our daily lives like the Rabboni Shalom Lahavdil does. To Torah, to helping others, to considering and judging what's appropriate, but also a time lischok, a time to enjoy, a time to laugh. Thank you. Chag Sameach. Question?
Is there, you just comment with regard to the difference between smoke and
Schok, tzachok, with a tzadi, with a sin, there clearly is a difference. And clearly, as that Rashi points out regarding Sarah and Avraham, where they have the same response, one, he says, is simcha, and one is not. Avraham's response is one of joy, even though It's not clear from the psukim. So I think they're similar, but they're not necessarily the same. They're to some extent, tzchok has more of a mocking quality, but they're very often used interchangeably. Thank you all. Yes, a question. Okay, I don't want to go over time.
There's a commandment or mitzvah to have simcha.
Right, Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha, certainly. So, simcha.
I would think that, if you don't laugh, you cry sometimes.
Absolutely. So, certainly in that sense, Yitzchak is that we're hoping for as Avram is hoping for a future tzchok, a future laugh, a future simcha. Absolutely. Thank you.
It's my pleasure and honor to call upon Rabbi Kenneth Hain, who doesn't need any introduction in this neighborhood, who will speak on humor, hashkafic perspectives.
This is being taped and filmed. All right, that cuts out half the material. Right, that's the first joke. Hopefully. Good afternoon, welcome. I read the other day in a, I don't know what it was, I think it was online, a slate which said, never accept an appointment unless you would accept it for the next day. So when they called me about 4 months ago and they said, would you like to give a talk on humor and related matters? When is it? I said, June 2nd. I said, yeah, sure, fine. And they said, yesterday, June 2nd, that's Erev Shavuos, what am I doing here? Anyway, I'm glad to be here, in truth, because I know not only a lot of you sitting here, we've known each other a long time, and I'm also very mindful of the fact that there are many reasons in the world today not to laugh. There are many serious issues and many somber realities that we, particularly as the Jewish people, are facing. And perhaps for that very reason, this topic and this talk is particularly relevant. So, when we think of a Jewish perspective on humor, we have to first ask ourselves an important question. Is a Jew allowed to engage in humor? That's one good answer. Why not? Where in our tradition do we see that it's permissible to respond humorously? Purim? That's good. It's Erev Shavuos, though. What are we doing here?
Good question.
Any other response? Where in our tradition is humor or a humorous response a legitimate one? Sarah, when she heard she was going to have a baby, she laughed. And was criticized. Which also brings another not so humorous fact into theme, that we will have a son who will laugh. That's a remarkable hope for a Jewish boy. Obviously, Abraham and Sarah did not realize that he should be going to medical school or becoming a hedge fund or something. But they were hopeful that he would laugh. And so this is the beginning of the sort of Jewish, I would call it romance with laughter, which is carried down into our current state of the Jewish people. I'm sure all of you heard about a few months ago the well-known study done by the Pew Commission, the Pew Report on the state of Jewry, particularly in America. And they particularly asked, what are the qualities that make up being a Jew? So, what essential element do you regard as necessary to be a Jew today? So the number one answer was caring about others. That was not number one. Anybody know what number one was? Laughing was not number one. This tells you actually, I think, something not funny about American Jewry. 73% of American Jews felt that the number one thing that a Jew today should remember and recognize is the Shoah. So you could view that in a positive sense. On the other hand, you could say, Nebuch, if that's the first response you have about what's important to be a Jew, to remember the greatest tragedy, perhaps, in Jewish history, maybe we should worry. What was number two, by the way, that they thought? That was 73%. 69% felt that the most important element of being a Jew is to live an ethical life. Close enough. An ethical life. That you should live a life that is responsible to others, to live a life where you treat others properly. Number three, 56% said most important part of being a Jew is to exhibit justice and equality. Our thoughts, namely when Abraham heard that he was going to have a baby, what was his reaction? He laughed. And he wasn't criticized for it. Whoa! Why is that? So Rashi says, because when he heard the news, he was misameach. He was joyous. So when he heard it, he laughed. When she heard it, she also laughed. So you see already there are two different kinds of laughs. There's a joyous laugh. There's perhaps, at least according to Chazal, a mocking laugh. So perhaps, though, we have a little bit of a response that laughing is okay. Where else do we see, following that idea that laughing, joking, humor is a part of Jewish tradition? Well, let's stick with Abraham and Sarah first. What did they name that boy? Yitzchak. Yitzchak, the first Jewish boy ever to walk on this earth, was named for the fact that he will laugh. That's our hope for him. That's our dream.